This happened to my family about 8 years ago, and I still think about it sometimes when I'm lying in bed at night. We lived in a pretty quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows everyone. People keep their lawns neat, and nothing really happens. It was the middle of winter, probably late January or early February. I remember because there was snow on the ground. Not fresh snow, but that old, packed-down kind that gets icy and gray after a few days. I was 15 at the time, and I'd gone to bed around 11 that night. My parents had stayed up a bit later watching TV, but by midnight the whole house was dark and quiet. Our street was always dead silent at night anyway, but in winter it was even worse. No cars passing by, no dogs barking. Nothing. Just that heavy, muffled quiet you get when there's snow everywhere. I don't know exactly what time it was when the knocking started, but it must have been around 2 or 2:30 in the morning. I woke up to the sound of it. Not gentle knocking, but loud, urgent pounding on the front door. The kind of knocking that immediately makes your heart race because you know something's wrong. I heard my dad get out of bed in the room down the hall. I could hear him moving around, probably pulling on his robe or whatever. My mom said something I couldn't make out, her voice low and worried. I got out of bed too and cracked open my bedroom door just enough to see the hallway. The house was completely dark except for the nightlight we kept plugged in near the bathroom. The knocking came again, harder this time. Whoever was out there wasn't going away. My dad went downstairs. I could hear his footsteps on the stairs, hear him moving through the living room toward the front of the house. But he didn't open the door. Instead, he went into the kitchen, which was right next to the entryway, and I heard the window slide open. The kitchen window looked out onto the front porch, so you could see who was at the door without actually opening it. I stayed at the top of the stairs, holding onto the railing, trying to hear what was going on. "What's going on?" my dad called out through the window. His voice was firm, but not aggressive. He wasn't trying to start anything, just trying to figure out what was happening. A man's voice answered from outside, and even from where I was standing, I could hear the desperation in it. "Please, I need help," the man said. "I've been hurt. I need to come inside and call an ambulance. Please, I'm freezing out here." His voice was shaky, like he was in pain or maybe on the verge of tears. It sounded real. It sounded like someone who genuinely needed help. But my dad didn't open the door. "I'll call an ambulance for you," my dad said, his voice still steady. "But I can't let you inside. I don't know you." There was a pause. I remember that pause so clearly because the silence felt heavier than it should have. The man didn't respond right away, and when he did, his tone had changed. "I need to come inside," he said again. But this time there was no pleading in his voice. It was flat, cold. "Open the door. I need to use your phone." "I'll call for you," my dad repeated. "Help is coming. You can wait on the porch." "Open the door." The shift was so sudden it made my stomach drop. 1 second the guy sounded like he was dying, and the next he sounded angry. No, not just angry. Threatening, like he wasn't asking anymore. My dad didn't answer him. I heard the window slide shut, heard the lock click into place. Then he came back through the living room, and I saw him pick up the cordless phone from the table near the couch. He dialed 911, and I could hear him talking quietly to the dispatcher, explaining that someone was at the door claiming to be injured but acting aggressive. My mom had come out of their bedroom by then and was standing next to me at the top of the stairs. She put her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Stay up here." After my dad hung up with the dispatcher, he went back to the kitchen window and looked outside again, but he didn't open it this time. He just stood there for a minute, staring out into the dark. Then he came back into the living room and looked up at us. "He's gone," he said quietly. We all just stood there for a minute, not saying anything. The house felt too quiet again. My dad double-checked the locks on the front door, then checked the back door too. Everything was locked. He told us the police were on their way and that we should try to go back to sleep, but none of us moved. We just waited. The police showed up maybe 15 minutes later. 2 officers. My dad talked to them on the front porch while my mom and I watched from the living room window. They walked around the yard with flashlights, checking the side of the house and the driveway. One of them looked at the snow on the ground near the porch, probably looking for footprints, but I don't know if they found anything. After a few minutes, they came inside and asked my dad some questions. What the man looked like, what he said, whether we'd seen him before. My dad described him as average height, wearing a dark coat, but he hadn't gotten a great look at his face. It was dark and the porch light hadn't been on. The officers told us to keep everything locked and to call again if anything else happened. Then they left. We thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. A few hours later, maybe around 4:30, there was banging at the back door. Not knocking, banging. Hard, deliberate, like someone was slamming their fist or their shoulder against it. I was still awake. I don't think any of us had really gone back to sleep. I heard it immediately, and so did my parents. My dad was already on his feet, moving fast toward the back of the house. The back door opened into a small mudroom that led to the backyard, and the yard itself was fenced in. To get back there, you'd have to either go through the side gate, which was locked, or climb over the fence. Either way, it wasn't easy to access. My dad didn't go into the mudroom. He stopped just outside it and yelled through the door. "The police are already on their way. You need to leave now." The banging stopped. Just like that. Instant silence. My dad stood there for a long time, just listening. My mom had her phone in her hand, ready to call 911 again, but the house stayed quiet. After a few minutes, my dad opened the mudroom door, just enough to look through the window in the back door, but he didn't see anyone. He didn't unlock it or open it. He just looked. "Nothing," he said quietly. We called the police again anyway. They came back out, checked the backyard, the fence, everything. No sign of anyone. No footprints in the snow near the back door, which didn't make any sense because we definitely heard someone out there. One of the officers said it might have been an animal, but we all knew that wasn't true. Animals don't bang on doors like that. I'm from a small town in Tanzania. My family didn't have much. My dad worked odd jobs, my mom sold vegetables at the market. We got by, but barely. Growing up, I watched them constantly stress about money. Some weeks we weren't sure if we'd eat. After I finished school, there was nothing for me there. No real work, no future. We all knew that if anything was going to change, someone had to leave. That someone was me. My parents started planning. They sold our TV. My mom sold her wedding jewelry, the only valuable thing she owned. My dad borrowed money from relatives and neighbors. They scraped together everything they could. The plan was simple. Send me to Canada, I'd find work, and I'd send money home. I'd change everything for us. I didn't want to go. The pressure was overwhelming, but this was our only shot. I arrived in Toronto in January, the middle of winter. I'd never felt cold like that before. It hurt just to breathe outside. Still, I was hopeful. I had my resume ready. I was willing to do any job. Cleaning, fast food, warehouse work, anything. The apartment they found online wasn't really an apartment. It was a basement room in someone's house. One small space. My bed against the wall. A tiny counter with a hot plate that counted as a kitchen. A bathroom so cramped I could barely turn around. Low ceiling, exposed pipes, damp air. Even with the heater running, it was always cold. But it was mine. And at $600 a month, it was the cheapest I could find. The job search didn't go how I imagined. I applied everywhere. Walked in the freezing cold handing out resumes. Most places didn't even look at me. A few interviews came, but they always chose someone else. Weeks passed, then months. My savings started disappearing. I switched to one meal a day. At night, I turned off the heater and slept, wearing every piece of clothing I owned. My mom called often, asking how things were. I lied, told her interviews were going well. I couldn't tell her the truth, that I was failing, that the money they sacrificed everything for was running out. The guilt was heavy. Every morning I woke up feeling like I was letting them down. It was around the 3-month mark when it happened. That night I went to bed exhausted. The room was dark except for a faint glow from the small basement window near the ceiling. I fell asleep quickly. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. Something felt wrong. Then I heard it, a soft sound, a quiet movement inside the room. I opened my eyes just a little. There were people in my room, 2, maybe 3 men. I couldn't see their faces, only their shapes moving in the dark. My heart stopped. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Every instinct screamed to run, but fear locked my body in place. I thought, if they know I'm awake, they might hurt me. If they think I'm asleep, maybe they'll just take what they want and leave. I had $340 left under my mattress, all the money I had in the world. I was sure that's what they came for. One of them moved near my desk. I heard the chair shift. Another stood close to my bed. I could hear his breathing. Slow, calm, too close. A drawer opened. Something moved on the desk. Soft, deliberate sounds. Minutes passed. Then silence. I heard the door close gently. Still, I didn't move. I stayed frozen, convinced one of them might still be inside, waiting. I don't know how long I lay there. Maybe an hour. Maybe more. Eventually, I forced myself to open my eyes fully. The room looked normal. My laptop was on the desk, my jacket on the chair. Everything where I left it. With shaking hands, I reached under the mattress. The money was still there. I checked everything I owned. Drawers, backpack, suitcase. Nothing missing. Nothing disturbed. I stood in that tiny room, confused and terrified. Why come into my room and take nothing? I didn't sleep that night. I sat against the wall, watching the door, until morning. I thought about calling the police. But what would I even say? That strangers broke in and didn't steal anything? I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. Or worse, that I'd get into trouble I didn't understand. So I told no one. That was 8 months ago. I still live in that room. I eventually found part-time work at a warehouse. I send small amounts of money home when I can, but I can't sleep properly anymore. I push my bed against the door every night. I keep the light on. Every sound makes me freeze. I replay that night again and again. Who were they? How did they get in? What were they looking for? If they had robbed me, at least it would make sense. But they didn't. And that's what haunts me. Because if they came once, they can come again. So every night, I lie in that same bed, listening, waiting, hoping I never hear those footsteps again. This happened to me about 3 years ago when I was 16. My parents had gone out of town for the weekend to visit my aunt who just had surgery, and I'd stayed home because I had a big chemistry test that Monday and didn't want to miss school. They'd done this before, left me alone for a night or two, and it was never a big deal. I was responsible. I knew how to lock the doors, and our neighborhood was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. It was mid-February, and we were in the middle of a pretty heavy snowstorm. Not a blizzard or anything crazy, but steady snow that had been coming down since early afternoon. By the time it got dark, there were probably 4 or 5 inches on the ground, and it was still falling. Everything outside looked clean and white and quiet. I remember thinking it was kind of peaceful, actually. My parents had left Friday morning, and Friday night was totally fine. I ordered pizza, watched Netflix, did some homework. Normal stuff. I texted my mom before bed to let her know everything was good, and she reminded me to keep the doors locked and to call if I needed anything. Saturday was fine too, at least for most of the day. I slept in late, made myself breakfast, spent most of the afternoon studying at the kitchen table. The snow kept falling, and I could see our neighbors across the street shoveling their driveway. Our street was dead quiet, barely any cars going by because of the weather. Around 6 or 7 that evening, I went to throw something away in the kitchen trash can, and that's when I noticed it. There was garbage in there that wasn't mine. Fast food wrappers from a place I hadn't been to. An empty soda bottle, a brand I don't drink, a crumpled napkin with ketchup on it. I stood there staring at it for a minute, trying to figure out where it came from. My parents had taken the trash out Thursday night before they left, and I'd only thrown away a granola bar wrapper and some tissues since then. This stuff was underneath my trash, like it had been there before I'd started using the can. But that didn't make sense because the bag had been empty when they left. I checked the trash again, really looking at it this time. The wrappers were from a burger place about 10 minutes away. Recent wrappers, not old or gross, just crumpled up like someone had finished eating and thrown them away. I felt this cold knot form in my stomach. I walked through the house, checking the doors. Front door, locked. Back door, locked. Side door to the garage, locked. All the windows were shut and latched. Nothing looked disturbed. Nothing was missing that I could see. I stood in the living room for a minute, just listening. The house was completely silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak from the heating system. Outside, the snow muffled everything. No traffic sounds, no voices, nothing. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe my parents had stopped for food on their way out of town Thursday night and thrown the trash away before they left, and I just hadn't noticed. Maybe I was remembering wrong about the trash bag being empty. Maybe my dad had eaten something Friday morning before they left and I'd forgotten. But none of that felt right. I went back upstairs to my room and tried to focus on studying, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about those wrappers. I kept listening for sounds in the house. Around 9:30 that night, I was sitting on my bed with my laptop, half watching a YouTube video, when I heard it. The front door. Not knocking. Not the doorbell. The sound of someone trying the door handle. That specific metallic rattle of someone turning the knob, testing if it's locked. I froze. Completely froze. My laptop was still playing the video, some girl talking about skincare or whatever, but I wasn't hearing it anymore. I was just listening to that sound downstairs. A pause, then again. Someone was trying to get in. I reached over and paused the video, my hand shaking. The rattling stopped. I held my breath, listening so hard my ears started ringing. Then I heard something else, a scraping sound, metal on metal, like someone was putting a key in the lock. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I was going to throw up. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and pulled my knees up to my chest, making myself as small as possible on my bed. My room was at the front of the house, and my window looked out over the porch, but I had my curtains closed. I didn't want to look, I didn't want to move. The scraping continued. Whoever was down there was trying to unlock the door. I opened my phone and pulled up my mom's contact, my thumb hovering over the call button. But it was almost 10 at night, and they were 4 hours away. What were they going to do? I switched to my older brother's contact instead. He was away at college, about an hour from home. I typed out a message as quietly as I could, like the person downstairs could somehow hear me typing. Someone is trying to get in the house. I hit send and waited, staring at the screen. The 3 dots appeared immediately. What? Are you serious? Yes, I'm upstairs. Someone is at the front door trying to open it. Call the police right now. I'm scared. Call 911. I'm calling Mom. Do it now. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I was about to dial when I heard the rattling stop. Just stop. No more scraping. No more sound from downstairs at all. I waited, not moving, barely breathing. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing. I crept off my bed as quietly as I could and moved to my bedroom door, which I'd shut after coming upstairs earlier. I pressed my ear against it, listening. The house was silent again. That same empty, muffled silence from before. My phone buzzed in my hand and I almost dropped it. A text from my mom. "Honey, are you okay? Your brother just called us. Where are you?" I typed back. "I'm in my room with the door closed. I heard someone trying to open the front door, but it stopped. Stay where you are. Lock your door if you can. Dad is calling the police. Do not go downstairs." I locked my bedroom door, just a basic push-button lock on the handle, nothing serious, but it made me feel slightly better. Then I sat back down on my bed, phone clutched in both hands, and waited. My mom called a few seconds later. "Dad's on the phone with the police right now. They're sending someone over. Don't go downstairs, okay? Just stay where you are." "Okay. Do you still hear anything?" I listened. The house was quiet. "No." "All right. I'm going to stay on the phone with you until the police get there." We stayed on the line, neither of us really saying much. I could hear my dad's voice in the background, talking to the 911 dispatcher. My mom kept asking if I was okay, if I heard anything, and I kept saying no. Everything was quiet. The police showed up maybe 12 minutes later. I heard the car pull up outside. No siren, but I could see the red and blue lights flashing through my curtains. I heard car doors slam, then heavy footsteps on the porch. "They're here," I told my mom. "Okay, stay upstairs until they tell you it's safe. Okay." I heard knocking downstairs, loud and official. "Police, open up." I unlocked my bedroom door and went to the top of the stairs, still holding my phone. I could see the front door from there. I went down slowly, turned on the porch light, and looked through the peephole. 2 officers, both in uniform. I unlocked the door and opened it. "Hi, are you the homeowner?" one of them asked. "No, This is my parents' house. I'm here alone." "Okay. We got a call about someone trying to break in. Are you all right?" "Yeah, I think so. I heard someone at the door like they were trying to unlock it, but they stopped." The officers looked at each other, then back at me. "Did you see anyone?" "No, I was upstairs." "All right, we're going to check around the property. Can you stay inside and lock the door behind us?" I nodded and shut the door, locking it again. I watched through the peephole as they walked around the porch, then disappeared around the side of the house. My mom was still on the phone. "What's happening?" she asked. "They're checking outside." I waited. A few minutes later, one of the officers knocked again. I opened the door. "Ma'am, we checked the perimeter and didn't see anyone. There are footprints in the snow on your porch and leading down to the sidewalk, but with this weather, they're already filling in. It's hard to tell how recent they are. Okay? We'd like to come in and check inside the house, if that's all right with you, just to make sure everything's secure." I let them in and they walked through the whole house, downstairs first, then upstairs, checking closets and rooms. They didn't find anyone. They checked all the doors and windows again. Everything was locked. Before they left, one of them gave me his card and told me to call if I heard anything else. He asked if my parents were coming home soon, and I said they were on their way, which wasn't exactly true, but I didn't want them to think I was going to be alone all night. After they left, my mom told me to pack a bag and go stay at our neighbor's house across the street, Mrs. Chen, an older woman who'd lived there forever. My mom called her and explained what happened, and Mrs. Chen said of course I could stay over. I grabbed some clothes and my school stuff and walked across the street through the snow. Mrs. Chen answered the door in her bathrobe and gave me a hug and made me tea, and I slept on her couch that night. My parents drove home the next morning, cutting their trip short. We all sat in the kitchen and tried to figure out what had happened. My dad checked the locks on all the doors again. Everything was fine. No signs of forced entry. The footprints on the porch were long gone, covered by fresh snow. I've been camping since I was 12. My dad taught me how to build a fire in the rain, how to layer clothing properly, how to read weather patterns in the way clouds moved across ridgelines. By the time I was in my 20s, I'd done enough solo trips that the solitude felt natural, even necessary. So when my friends bailed on our late February camping trip, I didn't hesitate. I went anyway. The forecast called for snow, but not the heavy, dangerous kind. Just a few inches overnight. Nothing I hadn't handled before. I loaded my gear into the back of my Subaru on Friday afternoon and drove 3 hours north to the state forest we'd picked out weeks earlier. No campgrounds up there, just unofficial sites that locals and thru-hikers used. No fees, no rangers, no regulations. You parked where the dirt road ended and hiked in from there. The road itself was barely maintained. By the time I reached the access point, the snow was already falling in thick, lazy flakes that stuck to my windshield faster than the wipers could clear them. I parked in a small pullout where tire tracks from previous visitors had been mostly filled in. The forest pressed close on both sides, dense with oak and pine, branches sagging under fresh powder. I shouldered my pack and started walking. The trail, if you could call it that, wound through the trees for about half a mile before opening into the clearing. I'd seen photos online. It was a decent spot. Flat, sheltered on 3 sides by thick forest, with a stone fire ring someone had built years ago. The kind of place that felt remote without being inaccessible. The snow muffled everything. My boots crunching through the powder was the only sound. No birds, no wind. Just my breathing, visible in the cold air and the soft hiss of snow falling through bare branches. When I reached the clearing, I stopped and looked around. It was bigger than I'd expected, maybe 50 feet across. The fire ring sat near the center, half buried in snow. The tree line formed a rough circle around the space, dark trunks standing like sentinels. The ground was smooth and white, untouched except for my own tracks leading in. I checked my phone out of habit. No signal. I'd expected that. It was nearly 4 o'clock and the light was already starting to fade. I got to work. Setting up camp in snow is second nature when you've done it enough times. I cleared a spot for my tent with my boots, stamping down the powder until I had a relatively flat surface. The tent went up quickly, a simple 2-person dome, more space than I needed but easier to move around in. I staked it down with extra care, knowing the ground beneath the snow was partially frozen. By the time I finished, the daylight was nearly gone. The forest had taken on that peculiar dimness where everything looks flat and colorless. I gathered deadfall from the edge of the clearing, brushing snow off the smaller branches, and built a fire in the ring. It took a while to get going. The wood was damp, but eventually the flames caught and held. The firelight reflected off the snow in flickering orange patterns. I set up my camp stove and heated water for a dehydrated meal, something with rice and vegetables that tasted like cardboard but filled my stomach. I ate slowly, watching the fire, listening to the silence. It's hard to describe how quiet a winter forest is. In summer, there's always something: insects, birds, leaves rustling. In winter, especially when it's snowing, the world feels muted, compressed, like you're inside a room with the door closed. I didn't mind it. I'd always preferred the stillness. After I ate, I banked the fire and retreated into my tent. It was just past 7, but there wasn't much else to do. I changed into thermal layers, climbed into my sleeping bag, and pulled out a paperback I'd been meaning to finish. My headlamp cast a small circle of light inside the tent, turning the nylon walls a warm yellow. Outside, the snow continued to fall. I could hear it occasionally, soft impacts on the tent fabric, like someone tapping their fingers. I read for over an hour, maybe closer to 2. The cold crept in slowly despite my layers, but it was manageable. I was warm enough in the sleeping bag, and the book was engaging enough to keep my attention. At some point, I noticed the snow had stopped. I'm not sure how I knew. Maybe the sound changed, or maybe it was just a feeling, the sense that something in the environment had shifted. I set the book down and turned off my headlamp, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. Through the tent fabric, I could see the faint glow of the fire's embers reflecting off the snow outside. Everything else was black. I lay there for a few minutes, listening, hearing nothing. Then I heard the footsteps. They were slow, deliberate. The crunch of boots breaking through the top layer of snow, then compressing the powder beneath. Not close, but not far either. Somewhere at the edge of the clearing, maybe 30 or 40 feet away. I held my breath. The steps continued. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. They weren't following a straight line. They were moving along the perimeter, just inside the tree line. I told myself it was a deer, or maybe someone else camping nearby, walking through the woods. But I didn't believe it. Deer don't walk like that. Steady, measured, bipedal. And no one camps in weather like this unless they have to. The footsteps stopped. I waited, my heart beating hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. The silence stretched out. 10 seconds, 20. I started to relax, started to convince myself I'd imagined it. Then I heard a second set of footsteps. These came from the opposite side of the clearing. The same slow, crunching rhythm, the same deliberate pace. My stomach dropped. I sat up slowly, trying not to make noise. The sleeping bag rustled anyway, sounding impossibly loud. I strained to hear, pressing my ear toward the tent wall. For a long moment there was nothing. Then, quietly, I heard voices. They were whispering. 2 people, maybe more, speaking just loud enough that I could tell they were having a conversation, but not loud enough to make out words. The sound drifted across the clearing, distorted by distance and cold air. I fumbled for my knife, a fixed blade I kept in the tent's interior pocket, and held it in my hand. It felt useless. What was I going to do with a 4-inch blade against 2 people? Against anyone? The footsteps resumed, both sets moving in a slow arc around the clearing. I tracked them by sound, my eyes wide in the darkness, watching the tent walls as if I might see through them. One set of steps came closer, then closer still. I realized with a jolt that they were walking directly past my tent, maybe 10 feet away. I could hear every detail: the crunch of snow, the slight scrape of fabric, a jacket, pants, even the faint sound of breathing. The person passed by without stopping. The second set of footsteps moved behind the tent. I twisted around, still sitting in my sleeping bag, trying to follow the sound. Whoever it was, they stopped directly behind me, just on the other side of the nylon. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The whispering started again, clearer now. 2 voices, conversational, almost casual. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. They were talking to each other like this was normal, like they were discussing something mundane. That was what scared me most. Not urgency, not aggression. Just calm, quiet conversation, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. The footsteps started again. Both sets. They were circling, moving slowly around the clearing in opposite directions, crossing paths, stopping occasionally, then continuing. I could picture it in my mind. Two figures walking through the snow, visible in the pale light, looking at my tent, at the dead fire, at everything I'd left outside. I don't know how long it went on. 10 minutes, 20. Time felt warped, stretched out. My hand cramped around the knife handle, but I didn't dare loosen my grip. Then the whispering stopped. The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. I sat frozen, waiting, my breath shallow and quick. I heard movement near the center of the clearing, near the fire ring. Not walking, just shifting weight, snow compressing like someone standing still and adjusting their stance. That's when I made my decision. I couldn't stay in the tent. If they decided to come inside, to unzip the door, or just cut through the fabric, I'd have no options, no escape route. I'd be trapped. I moved as quietly as I could, keeping the knife in one hand and reaching for the tent's back wall with the other. My gear was scattered around me, the book, my headlamp, spare clothes. I left all of it. I pressed the blade against the nylon near the bottom seam and started cutting. The fabric parted easily, the sound covered by my own blood pounding in my ears. I made a slit just wide enough to crawl through, then paused, listening. Nothing. I pushed my sleeping bag aside and squeezed through the opening, emerging into the snow on my hands and knees. The cold hit me immediately. The air was well below freezing, and I was only wearing thermals and a fleece. My breath plumed out in thick clouds. I stayed low, crawling toward the tree line. The snow soaked through my pants within seconds, burning against my skin. I didn't look back. I focused on reaching the trees, on getting into cover. When I finally made it, I crouched behind a thick oak and turned around. The clearing was visible in the ambient light, that strange pale glow that snow gives off even in darkness. I could see my tent, a dark shape in the center. I could see the fire ring, and I could see two figures standing near it. They were just standing there, motionless. Two human silhouettes side by side, barely 10 feet apart. The snow was falling again, light flakes drifting down around them. But they didn't move. I couldn't see their faces. I couldn't see details. Just shapes. One of them turned slightly, looking toward the tent. I didn't wait to see more. I pushed off the tree and ran. The forest was a maze of shadows and obstacles. Low branches caught at my clothes. Roots hidden under snow tripped me twice, sending me sprawling into the powder. I got up and kept moving. No flashlight, no sense of direction, just blind panic and the desperate need to put distance between myself and the clearing. Behind me, I heard voices again, not close, but not as far as I wanted. They were calling out now, not words, just sounds, short bursts like they were coordinating. I pushed harder, my lungs burning in the cold air, my legs screaming. My hands were already numb. My face felt like it was being scraped with razors every time the wind picked up. I don't know how long I ran. It felt like hours. It was probably 15 minutes. When I finally stumbled onto the access road, I almost didn't recognize it. Just a narrow corridor through the trees, the snow slightly more packed down than the surrounding forest. I turned left toward where I thought I'd parked and forced myself into a jog. My car appeared like a miracle, a dark shape humped with snow. I dug my keys out of my pocket with shaking hands, dropped them, grabbed them again, and finally got the door open. I threw myself inside and locked the doors. For a long moment, I just sat there, shaking violently, my breath fogging up the windows. My fingers were too numb to grip the keys properly. I had to hold them between both palms and guide them into the ignition. The engine started on the second try. I turned the heat on full blast, threw the car into reverse, and got out of there. The road was treacherous, covered in fresh snow, narrow, full of blind turns. But I didn't care. I drove too fast, fishtailing twice, my headlights cutting weak tunnels through the falling snow. I didn't feel safe until I hit the highway 20 minutes later. I never went back for my gear, the tent, my sleeping bag, the pack with my spare clothes and food. All of it is still out there, unless someone else found it. I told myself I'd return during daylight, maybe with a friend, but I never did. I still go camping. I'm not going to let one bad experience ruin something I've loved my whole life. But I don't go alone anymore.